In the ancient land between two rivers, where the Tigris and Euphrates traced silver veins through the cradle of civilization, there stood a city called Uruk. It was no ordinary city. Its walls rose high into the sky, gleaming like bronze in the sunlight. They were built not merely of baked clay but of will, of legacy, of something closer to eternity. And at the heart of that city lived a man whose name would echo through thousands of years. Gilgamesh. He was no mere king. Gilgamesh was born of divine blood. 2/3 god and 1/3 man, shaped by the hands of the gods themselves. His mother was Ninsun, the lady wild cow, wise and revered among the goddesses. His father, it is told, was Lugalbanda, a great king who became a deity after death. From them, Gilgamesh inherited strength, beauty, and the wisdom of ages, but also the torment of mortality. The gods crafted him in majesty. Shamash, the sun god, bestowed radiant beauty upon him. Adad, god of storms, gifted him valor, and Anu, king of the heavens, laid at his feet the keys of knowledge. But they also left within him the aching thread of humanity, a soul that would hunger for meaning, for companionship, and, above all, for immortality. In the early days, before he knew sorrow or fear, Gilgamesh reigned in Uruk with a heavy hand. His strength was unmatched, his will unbending. He built great ramparts, temples to the gods, and gardens to awe the eye. He walked among his people like a lion among sheep. And though they revered him, they also feared him, for he was wild in his power and unrestrained in his desires. Thus begins the tale of Gilgamesh, a tale not of conquest alone, but of friendship, loss, and the eternal search for life beyond death. In Uruk, the people murmured. Though their city was glorious, its king was relentless. By day and by night, Gilgamesh pressed his strength upon them. No father could protect his son. No lover could shield his bride. The young were called to his bedchamber or his battlements, and there was no rest beneath his rule. So the people cried out, not to their king, but to the gods. Great Anu, they pleaded, Father of the sky, hear us. Gilgamesh is more than man, he is fierce like the wild bull. He crushes us with his might. Send him a companion, someone equal in strength, someone who can temper his heart. The gods heard. And from the red clay of the steppe, from the wilderness where beasts roamed free, the goddess Aruru, the divine womb, pinched the soil of the earth and shaped a man. She bathed him in the essence of the wild, and Enkidu was born. Hairy, untamed, and mighty, Enkidu knew no city, no priest, no king. He drank beside the antelope, ran with the gazelle, and tore open the hunter's traps. He was a child of the earth, free and fierce. One day, a hunter saw him by the watering hole and was struck with fear. Father, he said when he returned home, there is a wild man who undoes my snares. He runs with the beasts. I cannot catch anything. His father spoke wisely, go to Uruk. Tell Gilgamesh. He will know what to do. And so the hunter came before the king and spoke of this wild man. Gilgamesh did not reach for a spear. Instead, he summoned Shamhat, the temple harlot. Go, he said, undress before him. Let your beauty tame his wildness. Shamhat journeyed to the wilderness, and when she found Enkidu, she disrobed and lay beside the watering hole. Enkidu came, curious and drawn. For 6 days and 7 nights they lay together, and when it was done, something had changed. The beasts fled from him. His legs lost their swiftness. His heart turned inward with thought. "Come with me," Shamhat said gently. "Let me show you bread and wine and the city of men." And so, with aching steps and awakened mind, Enkidu left the wilderness behind and journeyed toward Uruk. As Enkidu approached the gates of Uruk, led by Shamhat, he beheld sights he had never imagined. Tall towers, vast walls, carved stone gleaming like copper in the sun. The scent of bread filled the air, and the clamor of human life echoed from the courtyards. Yet beneath the marvels of the city, he sensed a tension, like the stillness before a storm. The people looked at Enkidu with wide eyes. "Is this the man the gods have sent?" they whispered. "Is he to be the equal of Gilgamesh?" It was then that a cry rose in the city: Gilgamesh was coming. He strode with pride and strength, bound for the wedding house, as was his custom. For in Uruk, the law of the king was such that he claimed the bride before her husband. It was this cruelty the people had prayed against. But before Gilgamesh could reach the threshold, a figure stood in his path. Enkidu. The wild man, clothed in hair, mighty in form, blocked the king's way. Gilgamesh's eyes narrowed. Enkidu's chest rose. They clashed. It was like thunder meeting wind, bull against lion. They wrestled in the dust of the street, shaking the very stones of Uruk. The people gathered, breath held, watching the fury of the gods played out in mortal form. Blow after blow, they battled. Yet neither yielded. At last, Gilgamesh lifted Enkidu from the earth. But he did not strike the final blow. He saw, instead, the fire of courage in the other man's eyes. And Enkidu, panting, saw wisdom behind the strength of his opponent. And they laughed. The battle turned to friendship, fierce as their struggle. Gilgamesh reached down, and Enkidu took his hand. From that day forth, they were as one, brothers not of blood, but of soul. Together they feasted. Together they walked the walls of Uruk. But the restlessness in Gilgamesh's heart had not faded. Now, with an equal by his side, he sought something greater, glory, carved in the face of time. He turned to Enkidu one evening, eyes gleaming. "Let us go to the cedar forest," he said. "Let us slay Humbaba, guardian of the sacred trees. Let us make our names eternal." Enkidu's face grew grave. "Humbaba is not of men. He is a terror, set by Enlil himself to guard the forest. His breath is fire. His roar is flood. Do not tempt the wrath of the gods." But Gilgamesh was undeterred. "We are not children. If we fear death, then we achieve nothing. Let us go, friend. Let us seek a deed so bold that even the gods will remember us." Enkidu, though reluctant, could not deny the fire of friendship. And so preparations began. Axes of bronze were forged. Shields and swords fitted. Offerings were made to Shamash, the sun god, for protection. And to his mother Ninsun, Gilgamesh went in prayer. She wept, for she knew the dangers that lay ahead. But she blessed them, and gave Enkidu her favor as a son. And thus the two companions set forth, to face the monster of the forest and the will of heaven. The road to the cedar forest stretched far beyond the borders of known lands. Mountains loomed like sleeping gods, and valleys yawned with ancient silence. Gilgamesh and Enkidu, armed and resolute, pressed onward, each step echoing the weight of fate. At night, Gilgamesh was plagued by dreams, visions sent by the gods. In one, the heavens roared and the earth heaved; in another, a mountain collapsed upon him, only for a light to rescue him from beneath. Each morning, Enkidu would interpret these signs. "The dreams favor us," he would say, though a shadow of doubt often flickered behind his eyes. On the seventh day, they reached the edge of the forest. The cedars rose tall and straight, their scent thick and holy, like incense rising to the gods. But the forest was not silent, it breathed with the presence of its guardian. Humbaba. Created by Enlil, Lord of Storms, Humbaba was no mere beast. His face was a snarl of terror, his voice the rumble of distant thunder, and his very breath could blacken the air. Enkidu trembled, remembering the wild things he had once run with. "He is more than flesh," he warned. "He is the wrath of the sacred. We must be swift." But Gilgamesh raised his face to the sun and called upon Shamash. The god answered, sending winds, 8 mighty gales, that pinned Humbaba where he stood. Trapped, confused, the monster raged as the two heroes entered the sacred glade. There, in the heart of the forest, the battle began. Steel rang against bark and bone. The winds howled as Gilgamesh struck, and Enkidu moved like the wilderness itself, fierce and sure. Humbaba's cry shook the cedars. He pleaded, "Spare me, Gilgamesh. I was made to guard, not to destroy. Let me serve you instead." Gilgamesh faltered. But Enkidu, eyes hard, said, "Strike now. If you spare him, he will curse you with every breath. Finish it." And so Gilgamesh raised his axe. With one final blow, he cut down Humbaba, guardian of the gods. The forest stilled. With heavy breath, the two friends stood over their fallen foe. They carved a great cedar tree, tall and straight, as tribute. They would return with it to Uruk, proof of their triumph. But the earth was not pleased. Enlil, upon hearing of Humbaba's death, seethed in his high temple. "You have slain the guardian I appointed. For this, one of you must pay." And the sky began to darken. Back in the forest, unaware of what doom had been stirred, the companions offered prayers and turned toward home, bearing Humbaba's head and the glory they had sought. But fate, once awakened, does not sleep again. Returning to Uruk, the city welcomed Gilgamesh and Enkidu as heroes. They carried the mighty cedar, a trophy of their valor, and the head of Humbaba, grim as a warning to all who would stand against them. Songs rose in the streets, and the people praised their king as one who had conquered even the forest of the gods. But in the heavens above, another watched with desire and fury. Ishtar, goddess of love and war, beheld Gilgamesh in his glory. Her heart stirred with longing. Dressed in her finery, radiant and terrible, she came down to Uruk and stood before the king. "Gilgamesh," she said, "be my husband. I shall give you a chariot of gold and lapis lazuli, with wheels of precious stone. Kings and nations will bow to you. You shall have power without end." But Gilgamesh, bold from battle and proud of his deeds, looked into her divine eyes and spoke without fear. "You are a burning house that gives no warmth, a door that breaks its own bolt, a shoe that bites the foot of its wearer. What husband have you loved who has not come to ruin? Tammuz, the shepherd, you loved, and he was struck down. Every lover you take, you destroy." Ishtar's face twisted with rage. She soared into the heavens and stood before Anu, her father, and Anti-Lilil, her brother. "Gilgamesh has insulted me," she cried. "Give me the ball of heaven, that I may strike him down and show him the wrath of a goddess." Anu hesitated. "If I release the bull, he will bring famine and death. Are you prepared for the cost?" "I am," she swore. And so the bull of heaven descended, a creature born of starlight and drought. The earth split beneath its hooves. With each snort, pits opened, and men of Uruk fell into the chasms. The people screamed, and the city trembled. But Gilgamesh and Enkidu stood firm. Together, they faced the celestial beast. Enkidu seized it by the horns, anchoring it. Gilgamesh struck with his sword. Blow after blow, they brought it down. And when it fell, lifeless and steaming, Enkidu tore out its heart and offered it to Shamash. Then, in defiance, he cast the haunch of the bull at Ishtar herself. She stood atop the walls of Uruk, furious and humiliated, and called for vengeance. That night, as they rested from the battle, Enkidu dreamed. The god sat in council. Enlil, Anu, and Shamash. And they had made a decree. Though they slew Humbaba and the bull, such acts of defiance cannot go unpunished. One must die. And it shall be Enkidu. When he awoke, he knew. His days were numbered. A shadow had fallen over the friendship. The songs of victory faded, and sorrow took their place. Enkidu, once wild and untamed, now lay in a fevered bed. The man who had run with gazelles, who had faced gods and monsters, was withering like a tree struck by lightning. He cursed the day he was born, cursed the trapper who had found him, cursed Shamhat who had drawn him from the wilderness. But Shamash, the sun god, heard his rage and reproached him. Did she not give you wisdom? Did she not bring you to Gilgamesh, your friend, your brother? Through her, you gained a name that will never die. And Enkidu's anger softened. But the sickness remained. He dreamed of the netherworld, a realm of dust and silence. He saw its gates of bronze and saw the kings of old seated on thrones of shadow. He cried out to Gilgamesh, "I saw it, brother. I saw what lies beyond. The dead drink clay. The great and the lowly are equal. It is the fate of all men." On the 12th day, he could no longer rise. Gilgamesh knelt at his side, his face hollow, his voice trembling. "Do not abandon me, My friend, he pleaded. You are the axe at my side, the shield before me, the companion of my heart. But Enkidu did not answer. He died with the name of his friend on his lips. And Gilgamesh? He tore his clothes. He covered himself in dust. He wandered the streets of Uruk like a lion maddened by loss. He refused the comfort of food, of sleep. He could not be king, could not be anything, for the pain in his soul was too great. He built a statue of his friend, of gold and lapis, and offered the finest goods of the land in his honor. He called the elders of Uruk and wept before them. Did Enkidu not die like a hero? Is there no escape from death, even for the strongest? But no answer came. In his grief, a terrible truth awoke in Gilgamesh: death is the end of all men, even kings, even heroes. Enkidu's passing had cracked open the door of fear, and through it poured a longing deeper than all ambition, the desire for life that does not end. And so Gilgamesh, son of gods, king of Uruk, mighty among men, cast off his robes, left behind his city, and wandered into the wilderness. He sought Utnapishtim, the one man who had survived the great flood, the one to whom the gods had granted eternal life. If there was a way to escape death, it lay with him. Thus began a new journey, lonelier, quieter, but no less perilous. A journey not for glory, but for answers. Across burning plains and silent mountains, Gilgamesh wandered in despair. Clad in animal skins, his hair long and unwashed, he was no longer a king but a seeker, a man haunted by the shadow of death. He reached the twin peaks of Marshu, the great mountains that guard the rising of the sun. Their gates were watched by scorpion men, terrible in form, whose gaze could pierce the soul. At first they barred his way, but when they saw the grief in his heart and the fire that still burned in his eyes, they stepped aside. Never has a mortal passed through this gate, they warned. Beyond lies the path of the sun, a tunnel of utter darkness. Are you certain? I must go, Gilgamesh replied. I must find Utnapishtim and ask how he escaped death. And so he entered the tunnel, 12 leagues of darkness, where no light shines and no time passes. At the 13th league, dawn broke over an orchard of jeweled trees, carbuncles, rubies, emeralds, glistening with divine light. But Gilgamesh had no eye for beauty. His steps carried him ever forward. There, at the edge of the sea of death, he met Sidui, the alewife, who dwelt by the shore. She saw a wild man, gaunt and ragged. "Why do you look so lost?" she asked. "Why roam the earth in grief?" "My friend is dead," he said. "And I will die too. I seek Utnapishtim. He knows the secret of life." Sidui shook her head. "The gods gave death to men and life to themselves. Why do you chase what cannot be found? Be joyful, eat well, love your wife, raise your children. That is the lot of man." But Gilgamesh would not be turned back. So she told him of Ushabti, the boatman of Utnapishtim, who dwelled beyond the waters of death. Gilgamesh found Ushabti and shattered, in his ignorance, the sacred stones that guided the boat across the deadly sea. Yet the boatman, seeing his sorrow, relented. "Cut poles," he said, one for each league, and push us through the still, poisoned waters. So they crossed, league after league, until at last they reached the distant shore where Utnapishtim dwelt. Utnapishtim was not as Gilgamesh had imagined, not a warrior, but an old man, calm as a pond untouched by wind. "Why do you seek to escape what none can flee?" he asked. "Because I am afraid," said Gilgamesh. "I have seen death. I want to live." And so Utnapishtim told him a tale from before the world had memory, a tale of gods, a ship, and a flood. Utnapishtim looked into Gilgamesh's eyes and spoke. In the days before the flood, the gods grew restless. Humanity was noisy, unruly. Enlil, the storm god, decreed their end. But Ea, the god of wisdom, whispered to me through reeds in the wall, "Build a boat. Seal it tight. Bring the seed of all living things." I did as I was told. I gathered my family, craftsmen, beasts of the field, and birds of the air. For 6 days and nights, the storm raged. The gods themselves, watching, grew afraid of what they had unleashed. On the 7th day, the storm stilled. The sea was flat as polished glass. I opened a hatch. I wept at the silence. No man, no city, no field. Only water. Then the boat grounded on Mount Nisir. I released a dove, it returned. I released a swallow, it returned. Then I released a raven, and it did not return. The waters receded. I offered sacrifice. The gods gathered. Enlil was angry at our survival, but Ea rebuked him. So Enlil, begrudgingly, granted me and my wife life without end, but only for us. That gift was never meant for all mankind. Gilgamesh, hearing this, fell to the earth. "Then what hope is there for me?" he cried. Utnapishtim pitied him. "You may not live forever, Gilgamesh. But I will offer you a test. Stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. If you can master sleep, perhaps you can master death." Gilgamesh agreed. But no sooner had he sat down than sleep took him. He slumbered like stone. Each day, Utnapishtim's wife baked a loaf of bread and placed it beside him. When the 7th loaf was baked, stale and moldy, Gilgamesh awoke. "I have not slept," he claimed. "But look," said Utnapishtim, "see the loaves. Each marks a day." Ashamed, Gilgamesh wept. "What have I gained? I will return to Uruk empty." But Utnapishtim's wife, moved by pity, urged her husband to give him something. So he told Gilgamesh of a secret: in the depths of the sea lies a plant. Its thorns will prick you, but it grants renewed youth. Take it, and you shall regain your strength. Gilgamesh dove into the sea, tied stones to his feet, and retrieved the plant. Joyful, he planned to return to Uruk and share it with the elders. But on the journey back, weary from travel, he stopped to bathe in a clear pool. While he bathed, a serpent crept from the reeds, smelled the plant, and devoured it. Shedding its skin, it slithered away, young again. Gilgamesh fell to his knees. The gift was gone. The chance was lost. In silence, he journeyed home. Gilgamesh, weathered by sorrow, wearied by travel, and emptied of hope, stood once more at the gates of Uruk. His eyes, once full of fire and conquest, now held the deeper glow of understanding. His hands no longer sought the sword but reached instead for meaning. He turned to Ushabti, the boatman who had accompanied him, and gestured to the towering walls of the city, the gleaming ramparts he had built long ago. "Climb, Ushabti," he said. "Walk the walls of Uruk. Look at the foundation terrace. Examine the brickwork. Is it not made of burnt brick? Did not 7 wise men lay its foundations?" He no longer spoke of immortality. He spoke of legacy. For Gilgamesh had come to understand what the gods had known from the beginning, that the measure of a man is not in how long he lives, but in what he leaves behind, in the cities he builds, the lives he touches, and the memories held by those who follow. In later days, he offered sacrifices to the gods, ruled with justice, and honored the spirit of Enkidu with rituals and remembrance. His grief had become his wisdom. His longing had become his humanity. And when, at last, death did come for him, as it comes for all, it did not come as a terror. It came as a companion long expected, a rest well earned. The people of Uruk mourned him as none before. They wrote his deeds upon stone, carved his story into clay, and sang of his name for generations. Thus ends the tale of Gilgamesh, son of Ninsun, king of Uruk, seeker of truth. He did not find eternal life, but he found what all men seek, meaning. And in that, he lives still. Long before the Babylonian scribes etched the epic onto 12 tablets, Gilgamesh lived in the songs and myths of Sumer, the world's first civilization. In these older, scattered tales, we meet not a king tormented by death, but a bold, often mischievous hero of action. These fragments, composed during the 3rd millennium BCE, offer glimpses into the earliest layers of his legend. One such tale is Gilgamesh and Aga. In it, Gilgamesh is not a seeker of wisdom, but a rebel prince of Uruk. King Aga of Kish demands that Uruk submit to his rule. The elders counsel surrender, but Gilgamesh defies them. He rouses the youth of Uruk to arms, wages a bold campaign, and captures Aga. Yet, in a gesture of honor, he spares the king's life, an early sign of his sense of justice. In Gilgamesh and the Bull of Heaven, the roles shift from divine punishment to martial glory. Here, Ishtar sends the bull not out of vengeance, but as a foe to be defeated. Gilgamesh and Enkidu slay the beast as in the later epic, but with less sorrow and more celebration. It is a tale of strength, not consequence. Gilgamesh and the Hulupu tree presents a mythical vision. Inanna, the goddess of love, finds a tree planted by the banks of the Euphrates and nurtures it. But evil creatures infest it. She calls upon Gilgamesh to aid her. With axe in hand, he slays the serpent in its roots, drives off the spirits, and crafts a throne and a bed for the goddess from the tree's wood. It is a story of order restored, of divine favor won. Other fragments speak of a journey to the underworld, of contests with mythical beasts, and of Enkidu not as a wild man made by gods, but as a loyal servant and friend from the start. These poems reveal that Gilgamesh was already a figure of fascination, a protector, a warrior, a builder. Yet they do not yet dwell upon death, nor do they present him as a philosopher. That transformation, the turn inward, the fear of mortality, came later, with the Old Babylonian and Standard Babylonian recensions. But the roots were there. His strength, his pride, his friendship with Enkidu, and above all, the sense that this was a man who stood apart from others, a man meant for more. In the land between the rivers, the gods were never distant. They walked in the wind, whispered in the reeds, stirred the floods, and burned in the sun. The people of Mesopotamia, Sumerians, Akkadians, Babylonians, believed the world was shaped by divine will. Cities had patron gods, kings ruled by celestial favor, and every grain of barley owed its life to the heavens. Gilgamesh's tale is threaded with these gods, not only as distant figures, but as characters with will, emotion, and power. Each shapes his path. Anu, the sky god, father of gods, reigned over the highest heaven. He was remote but mighty. When Ishtar raged at Gilgamesh, she came to Anu to demand vengeance, and it was he who allowed the bull of heaven to descend, despite knowing the cost. Enlil, lord of wind and storm, was more active and stern. He appointed Humbaba to guard the cedar forest and reacted with fury when Gilgamesh slew him. In the great council of gods, it was Enlil who decreed that Enkidu must die. He was the enforcer of cosmic order. Enki, god of water, wisdom, and magic, was subtler and kinder. He warned Utnapishtim of the coming flood by whispering through the walls. He challenged Enlil's harshness, reminding the gods that compassion too had its place. Shamash, the sun god, shone with light and justice. Gilgamesh prayed to him for guidance and protection on the journey to the cedar forest. Shamash sent the winds that pinned Humbaba. He also wept for Enkidu and argued that such a noble soul should not die. Shamash is the closest to a divine ally in Gilgamesh's journey. Ishtar, Inanna, goddess of love and war, was beautiful and deadly. Her passion could lift kings and destroy them. When Gilgamesh spurned her, she revealed her tempestuous heart. She called down divine wrath, not only out of insult, but because her pride could not bear refusal. Ninsun, mother of Gilgamesh, was a wise and gentle goddess, called the wild cow for her nurturing spirit. When her son prepared to face Humbaba, she prayed to Shamash and adopted Enkidu as her own, ensuring divine protection for both. Aruru, the goddess of creation, formed Enkidu from clay, breathing into him the spirit of the wild. She answered the cries of Uruk's people not by punishing Gilgamesh, but by creating balance, giving him a friend and a mirror. Each of these deities reflects an aspect of the Mesopotamian vision of the world. The gods were not perfect, nor all-knowing. They were capricious, proud, wise, and vengeful. They mirrored humanity in divine scale, and their wills governed fate. Yet, in the story of Gilgamesh, the gods are not all-powerful. Mortality is their boundary. Even they, at times, argue and fail. And it is within this divine world that humanity must find its meaning. The Epic of Gilgamesh, carved into tablets over 3,000 years ago, speaks across time not because of its gods or monsters, but because of its questions. At its core, it is a meditation on the human condition. Why must we die? What is a good life? How do we endure loss? Friendship is the soul of the tale. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu meet, they are opposites, one raised in the wild, one in the palace. Yet in their struggle, they become brothers. Their bond is forged not just in arms, but in trust. They eat together, dream together, defy gods together. It is through Enkidu that Gilgamesh first learns compassion. And it is through Enkidu's death that he learns fear. When Enkidu dies, the mighty Gilgamesh, who once strode the walls of Uruk like a lion, collapses. His grief is raw, unguarded. Shall I not die too? Am I not like Enkidu? This question becomes his obsession. The death of his friend awakens the unbearable truth: even kings must die. Even the strong, the noble, the beloved, return to dust. So begins the search for immortality, not through conquest, but through understanding. Gilgamesh's journey to Utnapishtim is not just a physical one, but a pilgrimage of the soul. He seeks to escape death, but the gods have barred that door. Utnapishtim tells him, there is no permanence. Do we build a house to stand forever? Do we make a contract that will last for all time? It is a lesson bitter and clear. Life is fragile. Time is short. And so, the epic urges another path, not to escape death, but to accept it. In the words of Sidui, the alewife by the sea, fill your belly. Day and night be merry. Make every day a feast of joy. Let your clothes be fresh, bathe in the water, cherish the child who holds your hand, and delight in the wife in your arms. This is the fate of mankind. Here lies one of the first expressions of humanism. It does not promise salvation, but it offers meaning, joy, love, creation, memory. And then there is legacy. When Gilgamesh returns to Uruk, the gods have not changed. He has not been granted eternal life. But he climbs the walls of the city he built and finds solace in his creation. His hands have shaped a world. His name will live in stone and song. Thus, the epic does not end in triumph, but in wisdom. Gilgamesh, once a tyrant, has become a teacher. He teaches that grief is the price of love. That death gives shape to life. That in our works, our words, and the hearts we touch, we endure. The story of Gilgamesh did not vanish with the crumbling of temples or the fall of kings. It journeyed forward, silent, buried under earth and ash, until rediscovered thousands of years later in the ruins of Nineveh, within the library of Ashurbanipal. But even before its rediscovery, its echoes had spread. The Epic of Gilgamesh shaped myth, literature, and theology across cultures. Among the most striking parallels is the tale of the flood, as told by Utnapishtim. It predates the biblical story of Noah by centuries. In both, the gods, or God, choose to destroy humankind with water. One man is warned, builds a vessel, brings aboard animals, survives, and offers sacrifice after the waters recede. A bird is sent out to find dry land. The similarities are not coincidence, they are cultural inheritance. The flood motif, born in Mesopotamia, flowed into the Hebrew Bible, carried by oral tradition and trade routes through the ancient Near East. But the influence goes beyond stories of deluge. Ecclesiastes, that solemn and searching book of the Bible, echoes Siduri's wisdom: "Go, eat your bread with joy, enjoy life with the wife you love, for this is your lot in life." Just as Gilgamesh learns that life is brief but can be rich in meaning, so too does the preacher of Jerusalem. Even the structure of heroism, a powerful figure who undergoes a fall, who wanders, suffers, and returns changed, can be seen in later epics. Homer's Odyssey, composed centuries after Gilgamesh's first tablet, bears structural kinship: the long journey, divine encounters, the wisdom gained. In classical antiquity, the story was less well known, but fragments survived. Later, in Islamic and medieval Christian texts, elements of the myth subtly reappeared, reshaped and woven into new theologies. Yet it was not until the 19th century, when archaeologists like Austen Henry Laird uncovered the clay tablets of Nineveh, that the world remembered Gilgamesh in full. George Smith's translation of the flood narrative caused a sensation. Suddenly, the Bible was not alone in telling humanity's oldest stories. In the modern age, Gilgamesh became a symbol of something more: the human desire to understand mortality. His story has inspired poets, novelists, philosophers. Rainer Maria Rilke, Philip Roth, and Derek Walcott all touched his shadow. Versions have been set to music, staged in theaters, explored in classrooms. For in Gilgamesh, we see ourselves, not gods, not beasts, but something between. Mortal, yet yearning. Lost, yet seeking. The Epic of Gilgamesh begins with strength and pride, with a king who strides the earth like a god. But it ends in silence. In a gaze cast over stone walls. In a question posed to the stars: what does it mean to be human? This is not a story of gods descending in glory, nor of eternal paradise won. It is the story of a man, stronger than any, more daring than most, who could not outrun time. And yet, in failing to do so, he discovers something deeper than divinity. He discovers humility. He discovers that friendship is worth grief, that the weight of love is heavier than the weight of kingdoms. He learns that death is not the enemy, but the measure by which life gains meaning. The journey of Gilgamesh is our journey. We fear what he fears, the ending of breath, the fading of memory. We grieve as he grieves, losing those who held our hearts. We search, as he searched, for what endures. In the end, Gilgamesh does not find immortality in a distant land or in a divine gift. He finds it in the walls of Uruk, in the strength of what he built, in the wisdom he carries home. And in the clay tablets on which his deeds were written, which endured long after his body crumbled to dust. There is something haunting in this. Something beautiful. A king who wished to live forever, and did. Not in flesh, but in story. Every time we speak his name, he rises again. Every time his tale is told, the dust of the ages falls away, and Gilgamesh walks once more beneath the sun. He walks with us. For as long as humans question death, as long as they love and fear and build and remember, Gilgamesh will not be forgotten. His name, carved in clay, now breathes through centuries. His voice, once lost in ruins, now echoes in our hearts. This is not the end. This is memory. This is humanity. This is Gilgamesh. The Man and the King, a character portrait of Gilgamesh. Before he was legend, before tablets and temples bore his name, Gilgamesh was a man. And like all men, he was shaped by contradiction. He was 2/3 divine, yet it was the third that was mortal which defined him. In his youth, Gilgamesh ruled not with compassion, but with might. He took what he wished, bedded whom he pleased, drove his people to the edge of despair. The gods made him powerful, but not yet wise. In this early form, he is both tyrant and prodigy, magnificent and dangerous. Yet even then, beneath the arrogance, there was a hunger. Not just for conquest, but for meaning. His deeds were not idle, they were cries against the silence of existence. And then came Enkidu. Their meeting marks the great turning point, not only in the story, but in the heart of Gilgamesh. Here is someone who does not yield. Who speaks truth to power? Who stands not beneath him, but beside him? Through Enkidu, Gilgamesh learns trust, laughter, sorrow. They are more than warriors. They are mirrors. And when that mirror is shattered by death, Gilgamesh is left with not just grief, but awakening. His transformation is slow and painful. He begins his tale as a demigod and ends it as a man, wiser, more compassionate, profoundly human. He does not become perfect. He still seeks immortality. Still tries to defy the natural order. But his journey changes him. He listens. He weeps. He prays. By the time he returns to Uruk, he no longer seeks to dominate his city. He gazes upon its walls with reverence. He speaks of legacy, not power. And when death comes at last, as it must, it finds him not with fear, but with peace. Gilgamesh is not a hero because he wins. He is a hero because he grows. And in that growth, he reflects what we all might become, not gods, not monsters, but something nobler. Human. Enkidu, the wild man and the soul of the epic. If Gilgamesh is the heart of the tale, then Enkidu is its soul. He is born not from womb, but from earth, crafted by the goddess Aruru to be a counterweight, a balance to the unchecked pride of Gilgamesh. In this act alone, we glimpse something profound, that the gods, in their wisdom, respond not with punishment, but with companionship. Enkidu is wild at first. He knows no city, no law, no speech. He lives with the animals, drinks from the rivers, and roams the plains. He is innocent, not in ignorance, but in harmony. He harms no one, takes only what he needs. He is as old as the world itself. But the moment that changes everything is his meeting with Shamhat, the temple priestess. Her presence, her touch, her warmth, it awakens in him something deeper than desire. It is not lust alone, but transformation. Through her, Enkidu learns of human intimacy, of self, of separation from the natural world. The beasts flee from him now, he can no longer run as he did. He has become something else. Human. And though he mourns that loss, he embraces it. He eats bread, drinks wine, wears clothes. He walks toward Uruk, not as beast, but as man. His encounter with Gilgamesh is thunder meeting stone. They clash, yes, but from their struggle blooms brotherhood. Enkidu is not a servant, nor a sidekick. He is equal. And more, he is the one who tempers Gilgamesh. Who speaks with the voice of conscience? Who fears the gods when Gilgamesh mocks them? Who warns of the dangers of pride? In the forest, before Humbaba, it is Enkidu who urges caution, and later, who urges mercy not be shown. And when the bull of heaven comes, it is Enkidu who strikes it down beside his friend. But the gods are not blind. They demand payment for these offenses. And they choose Enkidu, not because he was the worse, but because he was the beloved. To strike Gilgamesh's soul, they take from him what he loves most. Enkidu's death is slow, fevered, and filled with anguish. He curses his creation. He weeps for his fate. But even in dying, he teaches. His death is not just a plot, it is the awakening of Gilgamesh's humanity. Through Enkidu, Gilgamesh learns mortality. Through Enkidu, the reader learns that to live fully is to love deeply, and to lose. Enkidu dies, but his spirit remains. In dreams. In memory. In the changed heart of the king who mourns him. He was made from clay, but he lives in fire. Shamhat, the civilizing touch of humanity. Shamhat enters the story not as a warrior, nor as a goddess, but as a woman of the temple or a hierodule, a sacred harlot devoted to the goddess Ishtar. Yet her role in the tale of Gilgamesh is no less profound than that of kings and gods. She is the first to touch Enkidu, not with sword or strength, but with intimacy. When the hunter, terrified by the wild man who dismantles his traps, turns to Gilgamesh for help, the king does not send soldiers. He sends Shamhat. And she does not approach Enkidu with chains or threats. She brings only herself. She lies beside the watering hole, unclothed, radiant in her purpose. Enkidu sees her, approaches, and they join together, not once, but for 6 days and 7 nights. This is not mere lust. This is a ritual. A passage. A rebirth. When it ends, Enkidu stands changed. He cannot run with the gazelles. The animals flee from him. But in place of what he loses, he gains something richer, consciousness. The knowledge of the self, of emotion, of boundaries. The gate between nature and civilization swings open, and Shamhat is the key. She offers him bread, wine, and words. She clothes him. She leads him to Uruk. She is, in truth, the midwife of his humanity. And though Enkidu later curses her in his fevered deathbed rage, the sun god Shamash intervenes. Was it not she who brought you to Gilgamesh? Who gave you friendship, love, and renown? And Enkidu's heart softens. He blesses her. Shamhat, in her quiet role, represents something sacred, the power of connection. She embodies the civilizing force of culture, of nurture, of feminine wisdom. She bridges the worlds of beast and man, temple and wilderness. She is not a god, yet she plays the role of divine agent. She is not a warrior, yet she changes the fate of kings. And her legacy is not just Enkidu's transformation, but the entire epic that follows. In ancient Mesopotamia, the figure of the temple priestess was both sensual and sacred, representing fertility, wisdom, and divine presence. Shamhat carries this heritage. She is not diminished by it. She elevates it. Utnapishtim appears in the story like a shadow from another world, a man who once lived among mortals, but now dwells beyond death. His name means he found life, and in him lies a secret older than kingdoms, the path by which a man crossed the threshold of the divine. Gilgamesh finds him at the end of his long, despairing journey, beyond the waters of death, in a place untouched by time. But what he sees is not a glowing immortal, not a figure of majesty, but an old man, quiet and weathered, sitting beside his wife. There is no glory in Utnapishtim's immortality. Only stillness. When Gilgamesh pleads for the secret of eternal life, Utnapishtim does not respond with power. He responds with a story, the oldest story the Mesopotamians knew. The tale of the Great Flood. Long ago, the gods decided to destroy mankind. Their reasons were not entirely just: humanity was too loud, too chaotic, a nuisance to the divine realm. Enlil, in particular, was determined. But Ea, god of wisdom, chose a different path. He whispered to Utnapishtim, not directly, but through the reeds of a wall, so as not to betray the decree outright. "Build a boat," the god said. "Make it sealed and strong. Bring aboard your family, craftsmen, animals, seeds." And Utnapishtim obeyed. For 7 days and nights, the world drowned. Even the gods grew afraid of what they had unleashed. They shrank from the storm, wept, and regretted their fury. When the flood receded, Utnapishtim's ark came to rest on Mount Nisir. He sent out birds to search for land. When the raven did not return, he knew the waters had withdrawn. He made a sacrifice, and the gods gathered. Enlil, furious at his survival, was calmed by Ea's intervention. And so Enlil, though grudgingly, granted Utnapishtim and his wife eternal life, but banished them far from mankind. He did not become a god. He became a relic. He tells this to Gilgamesh not to offer hope, but to show that immortality is not a prize to be won. It is an exception, never to be repeated. And yet, perhaps out of pity, perhaps out of mercy, Utnapishtim offers a challenge. If Gilgamesh can stay awake for 7 nights, he may prove himself worthy of life eternal. But Gilgamesh fails. He sleeps, as all mortals must. Still, Utnapishtim's wife urges kindness. "Let him return to Uruk with a gift," she says. And so Utnapishtim tells Gilgamesh of the plant of renewal, hidden in the depths of the sea. Gilgamesh retrieves it, but as we know, the serpent steals it away. Utnapishtim watches from afar as the hero departs, not in triumph, but in wisdom. Uruk, the first city and the cradle of civilization. Long before Babylon rose, before the pyramids were raised along the Nile, there stood a city of gleaming walls and ziggurats, a city born from clay and sweat, faith and fire. Its name was Uruk. This was the city of Gilgamesh. In the 3rd millennium BCE, Uruk was not merely a settlement. It was the world's first great city. Home to tens of thousands, it stood beside the Euphrates, commanding the surrounding plains. Its people laid down the earliest bricks, carved the first writing, cuneiform, into wet tablets, and structured life through temples, laws, and markets. Uruk was a marvel. Archaeologists have uncovered vast city walls, some stretching over 9 kilometers, matching the boasts of the epic. These were not myths. They were monuments, built by hands that believed in the eternal. Great temple complexes, including the famed Inanna precinct, dedicated to Inanna, later Ishtar, rose at the city's heart. Massive ziggurats, tiered and soaring, reached toward the gods. It was here that writing was born, not as poetry, but as necessity. The earliest cuneiform tablets were records of grain, labor, taxes. Yet from this dust of bureaucracy rose epics, prayers, hymns. And in this city, perhaps 2/3 God and 1/3 man, lived a real Gilgamesh. He may have ruled in the early dynastic period, around 2700 BCE. His name appears in the Sumerian king list, described as reigning 126 years. Of course, this number is symbolic, not literal. But it confirms he was remembered not just in myth, but in memory. The citizens of Uruk worshipped gods, yes, but they also honored kings as semi-divine. And Gilgamesh's reputation likely grew from royal acts into eternal myth. Over time, his deeds were reshaped, retold, exalted. And what was Uruk to Gilgamesh? It was not only his home, but his mirror. He returns to it at the end of the epic not as a conqueror, but as a pilgrim. He does not boast of monsters slain, but bids Ushanabi to look upon the city's walls, the ones he built. He seeks not glory, but legacy. Uruk endures where men do not. Its stones remember when flesh forgets. Even today, the site of ancient Uruk, Walker, in modern Iraq, lies silent under the desert sun. Its bricks whisper of temples and towers, of scribes and kings. And buried in that soil, the story of Gilgamesh waited for centuries, until it rose again. Clay and memory, the writing, preservation, and rediscovery of the epic. The Epic of Gilgamesh did not pass from mouth to mouth alone. It lived in clay, in wedge-shaped marks carved into tablets by reed styluses. This script, known as cuneiform, became the script of empires. And it is through this most ancient of writings that the voice of Gilgamesh reaches us still. From Sumer to Babylon, a tale written and rewritten. The earliest versions of the Gilgamesh tales were composed in Sumerian, in the 3rd millennium BCE. These were not yet a unified epic, but a cycle of poems, Gilgamesh and Aga, Gilgamesh and the Bull of Heaven, Gilgamesh and the Tree of Hulupu. They were preserved on tablets found in Nippur and other Sumerian cities. As the Akkadian language rose to prominence, first in the Akkadian Empire, then in Babylon and Assyria, these tales were adapted. Around 1800 BCE, a scribe known as Sin-Lekionini, working in Babylonian, gathered and reshaped them into a single epic narrative, the version we now call the Standard Babylonian Epic of Gilgamesh. It was arranged in 12 tablets, though the 12th is more of an appendix, a translation of a Sumerian poem about Enkidu in the netherworld. The 11 preceding tablets tell the story of friendship, adventure, death, and wisdom as we have followed. Sinlekianini's version gave the story structure and philosophical depth. He added the dreams, the divine dialogues, the journey to Utnapishtim. He shaped not just a hero, but a soul in search of meaning. His work was copied for centuries, by scribes in temple schools, by court archivists, by priestly scholars. It was not sacred scripture, but it was literary canon. The Library of Ashurbanipal. The most complete version of the epic comes from Nineveh, the capital of the Assyrian Empire. In the 7th century BCE, King Ashurbanipal, a great lover of knowledge, assembled the first great library of the ancient world. Among its thousands of tablets, now called the Library of Ashurbanipal, was the Epic of Gilgamesh. For centuries, it slept beneath the ruins of Nineveh. Then, in the mid-19th century, British archaeologists like Austin Henry Laird and Hormuzd Raz Sam excavated the site. Among their finds were broken tablets bearing cuneiform. These were sent to the British Museum. It was there, in 1872, that a young Assyriologist named George Smith translated one of the tablets and read, to the astonishment of the world, a flood narrative that closely matched the Book of Genesis. The rediscovery of the Epic of Gilgamesh shook the scholarly world. It was a voice from before the Bible, from before Homer, a voice that had slept for 2,000 years. Since then, scholars have recovered versions in Akkadian, Sumerian, Hittite, and Hurrian, piecing together variations and missing lines. New fragments continue to surface. Each adds nuance. Each deepens our understanding. The epic is no longer buried. It has returned to the world of the living. The voice of the epic, style, symbol, and storytelling. The Epic of Gilgamesh stands not just as the first epic, but as the first great literature of humanity. Its survival is remarkable. Its voice, even across millennia, is still strong. But what makes it resonate is not only its age, but its artistry. A poem in stone. The epic is written in elevated, poetic Akkadian, shaped in parallel lines and repetitive structures, devices meant to aid both memory and rhythm. Often, the lines repeat, slightly altered, building emphasis and emotion. When Gilgamesh dreams, the lines echo. My friend, why are the gods so silent? My friend, why do they speak through riddles? This repetition gives the poem a ritual tone, echoing religious chants, funeral laments, and sacred hymns. Symbols that speak across time. The epic is rich in symbolism, each journey, each object, each act layered with meaning. The walls of Uruk frame the tale. At the beginning and the end, they remind us that while men perish, their creations endure. They are the bookends of the story and of civilization itself. The cedar forest stands for the unknown, the sacred, the otherworldly. It is not just a forest, it is the boundary between human and divine, law and wildness. The bull of heaven, sent by Ishtar, represents divine wrath, but also fertility and drought, reflecting the fragile balance of ancient life. The plant of youth is a fleeting gift, offered, seized, and lost. Its theft by the serpent is one of literature's oldest links to the theme of lost innocence and the limits of human grasp. The sleep test given by Utnapishtim mirrors death. Gilgamesh's inability to resist sleep is a symbolic failure, a gentle, sorrowful proof that even the strongest cannot escape their fate. Archetypes born in clay. The epic gives us some of the world's first archetypes. The hero king torn between glory and wisdom. The wild companion, bridging nature and culture. The sacred woman, civilizing through love. The wise old man, keeper of hidden truth. The monster guardian, more sacred than evil. These figures would reappear in Homer, in Virgil, in the Bible, and beyond. They became the patterns of myth, the architecture of storytelling. The ending as revolution. Most ancient tales end with victory. Gilgamesh ends with acceptance. His journey is not to conquer but to understand. He is offered eternity, not in heaven, but in legacy, in the memory of walls, in the echo of his name. This is what makes the epic timeless. It does not tell us that we can live forever. It tells us how to live well. The supporting voices, characters along the journey. Though Gilgamesh and Enkidu form the epic's core, their path is shaped, deepened, tested, and illumined by those they meet. These figures, some mortal, some divine, bring clarity to the central questions of the tale. Let us turn now to Sidui, Ushabti, and Humbaba, each offering a lesson the hero must carry. Sidui, the alewife of the edge. Sidui dwells at the edge of the world, near the waters that lead to death. She is no goddess, no queen, simply a tavern keeper. Yet her role is profound. When Gilgamesh arrives, haggard and broken, she bars the door. "Who are you?" she asks. "Why do you wander with grief etched in your face?" Her suspicion turns to compassion, and she becomes the first mortal voice to counsel acceptance. She speaks plainly. "Fill your belly. Day and night be merry. Make every day a feast of joy. Let your clothes be fresh. Bathe in water. Cherish the child who holds your hand. Delight in the wife in your arms." These are not words of despair, but of earthly wisdom. Sidui reminds Gilgamesh, and us, that though eternity is denied, life is still a gift. She cannot show him immortality, but she offers him clarity. Ushabti, the ferryman of the waters of death. Ushabti is a liminal figure guiding souls across the sea no man may cross, a kind of Mesopotamian Charon. Yet unlike the Greek ferryman of the dead, Ushabti engages in dialogue, and even in rebuilding. When Gilgamesh arrives, he rashly destroys the sacred stones, possibly tablets of celestial navigation. Ushabti might have turned him away, but instead he sets him a task: cut poles, build a raft, face the waters. This act of labor, of journeying by human strength, marks a turning point. Gilgamesh must earn the crossing. Ushabti is a silent companion afterward, but in the end, Gilgamesh entrusts him with legacy, inviting him to gaze on Uruk's walls. He has become a witness. Humbaba, guardian of the sacred. Humbaba, guardian of the cedar forest, is no mere monster. Appointed by Enlil himself, he is sacred, terrifying, and tragic. His very presence, the terror of his roar, the flame of his breath, marks the boundary between man's world and the divine. Yet when Gilgamesh and Enkidu strike him down, a moral shadow falls. Humbaba begs for mercy. He promises allegiance. Enkidu urges Gilgamesh to strike before the gods see. And Gilgamesh obeys. This moment, more than the act itself, sets the gods against them. The forest was not for men, and its guardian was more keeper than villain. Humbaba reminds us, not all battles are just, not all victories clean. These characters, in their quiet roles, form a choir of guidance. They do not slay beasts or defy gods. But they shape the hero's understanding. They offer reflection where the journey offers trials. Each adds depth. Each brings Gilgamesh closer to wisdom. The will of the gods, divine order and human boundaries. In the Epic of Gilgamesh, the gods are not remote ideals or abstract forces. They are personal, emotional, contradictory. They shape the world, but they are shaped in turn by their own rivalries, pride, and pity. To understand the epic is to understand how the Mesopotamians viewed the cosmos, not as governed by fate alone, but by divine negotiation. Let us return to the key deities and what they represent in the order of things. Anu, the distant sky. Anu is the father of the gods, ruler of the heavens. Yet he is a passive figure, called upon rather than acting. When Ishtar demands the ball of heaven, it is to Anu she pleads. He warns of the consequences, but relents. Anu represents divine authority, remote, restrained, and ultimately yielding to the drama below. Enlil, the enforcer of cosmic order. Enlil, god of wind and earth, is the most active in enforcing balance. It is he who appoints Humbaba, guardian of the forest. He who demands punishment when the natural order is violated. When Gilgamesh and Enkidu slay the guardian and the ball of heaven, Enlil decrees Enkidu's death. To Enlil, order is sacred. Even kings must not cross the line between mortal and divine. His justice is not cruel, it is necessary. Enki the merciful whisperer. God of water and wisdom, often acts quietly and subversively. He warns Utnapishtim of the flood, not by open defiance but by speaking through a wall. His actions represent human survival, cleverness, and adaptation. In the face of Enlil's destruction, Ea pleads for mercy. He asks, should not the gods punish with measure? Send famine or plague, not complete extinction? Ea is the god who remembers that humans must live, not be erased. Shamash, the light of justice. Shamash, the sun god, is Gilgamesh's closest divine ally. He answers prayers, sends favorable dreams, and aids in battle. He also mourns Enkidu and defends him before the council of gods. Shamash is a symbol of divine companionship, of truth and guidance that walks with mortals. Yet even he cannot overturn death. He can only help Gilgamesh face it. Ishtar, Inanna the dangerous divine. Ishtar, goddess of love and war, embodies the duality of creation and destruction. She offers Gilgamesh marriage, not as affection, but as dominion. When refused, she responds with fury and unleashes the ball of heaven. Her love turns to wrath, her gifts to curses. Yet she is not evil, she is uncontainable. She represents the forces of nature that give life and take it away. Aruru, the Mother Creator. Aruru is invoked to create Enkidu, a response not of punishment, but of balance. She molds him from clay, breathing into him the spirit of the wild. She is one of the oldest goddesses, linked to earth and birth. Her act gives the tale its axis. Without her, there is no Enkidu, no friendship, no grief, no quest. In sum, the gods of Gilgamesh are reflections of the world as the ancients knew it, beautiful and brutal, wise and irrational, capable of both mercy and vengeance. To live rightly, in their view, was not to defy the gods, but to respect the limits of humanity. To build, to love, to weep, and to remember. The modern awakening, Gilgamesh in the contemporary world. When the Epic of Gilgamesh emerged from the dust of Nineveh in the 19th century, it was as though a forgotten voice from the deep past had spoken again. And what it said, about death, friendship, loss, and meaning, resonated not only with scholars and archaeologists, but with modern seekers of truth. Rediscovery and astonishment. George Smith's reading of the Flood Tablet in 1872 stunned the Victorian world. Here was a story, older than Genesis, describing a deluge, an ark, birds, and salvation. For some, it threatened religious certainty. For others, it opened a thrilling possibility that myth was memory, and the Bible was part of a wider, older tradition. But it wasn't just the flood that captivated minds. As translation spread, thinkers began to recognize in Gilgamesh the prototype of the existential hero. The psychological mirror. To psychoanalysts like Carl Jung, Gilgamesh became an archetype of the soul's journey, his descent into grief and his return to the city representing the individuation process, the integration of the unconscious and the self. Joseph Campbell, in his theory of the hero's journey, saw Gilgamesh as a primal model. The call to adventure, the trials, the abyss, the revelation, the return, these patterns were not invented by modern storytellers. They were already ancient. Even Sigmund Freud found in the tale echoes of psychological transformation, Enkidu as the ID, Gilgamesh as the ego, and their combined struggle as the shaping of the human psyche. A poet's companion. Modern poets, too, heard Gilgamesh's cry. Rainer Maria Rilke, haunted by death, spoke of the epic as a mirror of his own mortality. Philip Roth, in the great American novel, invoked Gilgamesh as a metaphor for masculine pride and loss. Derek Walcott and others saw in the tale a shared human grief, one not bounded by culture or creed. Each found in Gilgamesh something deeply personal. A lesson for a mortal age. Today, in a world marked by speed, disconnection, and the illusion of permanence, Gilgamesh offers a stillness, a return to elemental truths. We still fear death. We still seek meaning. We still build, and love, and grieve. Gilgamesh tells us we are not alone in that. He reminds us that even the greatest fall. That love is worth the pain it brings. That legacy lives not in fame, but in what we create, protect, and pass on. And he reminds us that the journey inward, the search for wisdom is the noblest quest of all. The last word, Gilgamesh and the thread of being. In the hush of twilight, when the sun lowers behind the walls of the city, and the wind stirs the reeds by the river, Gilgamesh still walks, though not in flesh, nor in bronze. He walks in story. His journey, etched in ancient clay and revived by modern voice, has spanned more than 4,000 years. Yet it remains whole. Because it is our story. We, like Gilgamesh, wake to power in youth. We strive. We love. We lose. We rage against death. And slowly, sometimes painfully, we come to see, not the gods in the sky, but the sacred in each other. In the work of our hands. In the people we love. In the memory we leave behind. Gilgamesh began as a king. He ended as a man. And that is his triumph. Not slaying monsters. Not defying gods. But becoming human. And it is here that the epic gives its final gift, not as an answer, but as a companion. A voice that says, I too have stood at the edge of death. I too have wept for a friend. I too have searched. And I have returned, not with the secret of life, but with the wisdom to live it. He invites us, as he did Ushanabi, to look upon our own walls, our homes, our deeds, our lives, and to find meaning in what we've built. So when the night grows quiet, and the stars rise over the ruins of Uruk, remember this. The king is gone. But the story remains. And in that, he endures. As shall we.